We are on the ballot. All of you are on the ballot. California is on the ballot. California values are on the ballot. Things we hold dear. Let's not take them for granted. The future, it happens here first. We're America's coming attraction. Eat your heart out, Texas and Florida. There's no other state in America like the state of California.
That was California Governor Gavin Newsom campaigning in West Los Angeles over the weekend. Early in-person voting began at select locations Saturday in the state's recall election. Newsom, a Democrat, is fighting to keep his seat after facing criticism from Republicans for pandemic-related shutdowns. There are just two questions on the recall ballot. One, shall Gavin Newsom be recalled from the office of governor? And who should replace him? Voters have 46 candidates to choose from. High-profile Democrats are showing their support for Newsom. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren joined him at that rally on Saturday. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have also promised to join Newsom on the campaign trail. But time is running out as Election Day is Tuesday, September 14th. For more on all of this, let's bring in Antjuan Seawright and Lauren Zelt. Antjuan is a CBS News political contributor and a Democratic strategist. Lauren is the founder of Zelt Communications and a former aide to Republican Senator Mitt Romney. Great to see both of you, my friends. Antjuan, I'm going to start with you. Tell us why this race is so important for the Democratic Party nationwide, especially after the resignation of Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York.
Well, thank you for having me and happy Sunday. Look, I think this race is important because it should be a reminder that the Republicans will nominate anyone who will say anything in order to roll back the clock in terms of the progress we've made in this country and in states that have Democratic governors. All you have to do is look at some of the rhetoric that has come from the mainstream Republican candidate in the state of California. It is also a friendly reminder that we cannot take anything for granted. We cannot make the assumption just because we've passed progressive pieces of legislation, just because we've done things that will protect this country and that will move this country forward, that voters oftentimes use that as a measure stick to whether they're going to stick with you through an entire term, i.e. no one in the world would have considered or guessed that we would even be having a recall election in the Democratic stronghold of the state of California. So we can't take anything for granted. This idea of business as usual should be no longer. Instead, we have to behave and enact on unusual business.
So, Lauren, I'm wondering, how big of an opening is this for Republicans?
It's certainly, there is an opening to be had. I mean, if you look at the Real Clear Politics average, right now, Gavin Newsom is holding steady at about 52.4%. That's only 2.4% above the 50% threshold that he needs to meet. So I think grassroots enthusiasts on either side are very motivated to get out the vote between now and September 14th, because this is a closer effort than I think Democrats would like to acknowledge. I think what you're seeing in California in terms of high numbers of unemployment, crime rate is up. There's a lot going on with addiction in California and other things that have just been exacerbated during the COVID crisis. And ultimately, California has been a lot stricter in terms of COVID restrictions than many other places in the state, which has hurt small business owners and in many cases has put them out of business. So Republicans see an opening here to have a victory should Californians decide to recall Governor Newsom.
And Antjuan, polling released last week showed that President Biden has a 58% job approval in California. It used to be 66% back in May. Does it benefit the president or Governor Newsom for President Biden to join him on the trail when the White House is still dealing with the aftermath of Afghanistan and Hurricane Ida?
Absolutely. As you know, the president won California very handsomely in the 2020 election. And I think the politics of California are very much so in line with Joe Biden and Gavin Newsom versus any other candidate the Republican Party could dream of. Here's the reality about California. The truth of the matter is Democrats have a 20 to 25 point registration margin in the state. According to Edison Research, 5 million people have already cast their vote. Between the two parties, Democrats hold a 28-point margin in terms of having more votes cast already, meaning voted early already. So I feel very good. The last polling I've seen personally has had the governor up very handsomely. In fact, had him at 58%. One had him at 59%. Early last week, I was in California for several days, spending time. The enthusiasm on the ground has certainly shifted toward Gavin Newsom in a very real way, and I do believe that he will come out victorious. I also do believe that the issues that you see the Republican candidates bringing to the mainstream, the things that they seem to want to fight for, does not line up with the majority of the people in the state of California. And no disrespect to any other voice around this race, but the truth of the matter is when you look at what Governor Newsom has done compared to governors in Republican states, there is night and day, and there's a clear difference, and I think that is the reason why you will see him have a very handsome victory on September 14th.
Lauren, there's so much to dig into in Antjuan's comments. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond both to the question of whether you think there is a California appetite to see these national Democratic politicians there in California, and also to that other point about how Californians feel about how their governor has overall handled the pandemic, and how Newsom got himself into some hot water by breaking some of his own pandemic restrictions.
Absolutely. I mean, on the point of nationalizing the race, this is an off-year election. It's actually an off-month election, even if we look at, it's the September timing, it's all very abnormal. So parties on both sides want to nationalize this race in a way so that they can almost use it as an incubator to test their messaging for races to come. Virginia, the governor's race there, functions very much in the same way, in that you'll see a lot of nationalized messaging being tested out in advance of the midterm election next year. So I think it's understandable that both sides are trying to nationalize this race. It's obviously understandable that we've seen politicians like Elizabeth Warren come in and campaign for Governor Newsom. I would caution, though, the idea that President Biden is going to be extremely popular on the campaign trail right at this moment. Yes, he will be popular with the Democratic base, which is what they are hoping to do, because in special elections, obviously, you're going to have a lower turnout. You have the more engaged voters that are showing up. But for some of the more independent mind voters, I'm thinking of the national security moms, many of whom came of age when 9/11, when those tragic attacks occurred. They have young children now, and they've just watched our president handling the tragic withdrawal of our troops, people left behind. And I think even liberals have admitted that the withdrawal from Afghanistan has not gone very well. So whereas it might have been a very good idea to have the president come campaign even 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, I think right now it's a little bit dangerous for Democrats. On the point about handling of COVID in California, certainly the restrictions have been a lot stricter there, but that's been to the detriment of many small business owners and individuals who are trying to keep the livelihoods going for themselves and for the people that work for them. At some point, there is a malaise about all these COVID restrictions, and the entire recall effort is based around the fact that many people believe that it's gone too far in California.
So we only have another couple of moments, and I want to tell our viewers who the Republican alternative is. At least Newsom's top Republican challenger is conservative talk show host Larry Elder, who's vowed to appoint a Republican senator to replace Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein if the 88-year-old steps down. Here's what Senator Elizabeth Warren had to say about that on Saturday.
What Larry Elder is saying is put him in the governor's office, and if he gets any chance at all, he will take away the duly elected Democratic majority, and he will hand the United States Senate over to Mitch McConnell and the Republicans. That's why I'm here.
California Democrats have been plagued by a lack of enthusiasm among voters. I'm going to give each of you a very quick opportunity to respond to that message that we just heard from Senator Elizabeth Warren, and whether or not you think that's enough to motivate people to turn out. Lauren, I'll start with you.
It motivates people on both sides. Republicans want control of the Senate back badly, and Democrats would like to keep it.
Antjuan, agree?
It's easier to vote against something than it is to vote for something. I think you will see some people, even if they may not 100% agree with Governor Newsom on everything, they will vote against the idea of giving the majority of the U.S. Senate to Republicans. In any given election, Lana, voters on the Democratic side of the aisle are casting a survival vote. I don't think this election is any different for the people of California.
All right. Antjuan Seawright, Lauren Zelt, thank you both so much.